Have you ever felt the ground shift beneath your feet when life throws a curveball you never saw coming? Maybe it was a sudden job loss, a health scare, or one of those moments when the world itself seems to twist into uncertainty. We've all been there. The truth is, uncertainty isn't just a passing storm. It's the very air we breathe in modern life. But here's the surprising twist. What if I told you that the chaos you dread could become your greatest teacher? 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who ruled Rome through wars and plagues, wrote these words: "The obstacle is the way." Not around it, not in spite of it, but through it. That's the Stoic secret. And today, we're not just revisiting ancient wisdom, we're unlocking 28 practical ways to wield it. Stoicism isn't about stiff upper lips or swallowing emotions. It's a mindset forged in the fires of real adversity, a toolkit for thriving when the world feels like it's spinning off axis. Think of it as mental armor, not to block out life's blows, but to meet them with unshakable poise. Whether you're navigating personal setbacks or the whirlwind of global change, these principles don't just help you survive uncertainty, they help you master it. And that's exactly what we're diving into today: timeless practices to steady your mind, sharpen your focus, and turn unpredictability into fuel for growth. By the end of this journey, you'll have more than just philosophy. You'll have a battle-tested playbook. We'll start with the core ideas that reframe how you see challenges, then move into actionable steps you can use today, from grounding techniques to thought exercises that rewire anxiety into clarity. And because wisdom grows when we reflect, each section will include prompts to make these lessons stick. So if you're ready to transform the way you face life's unknowns, take a deep breath. The path to poise begins right here. Picture this: you're stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, late for an important meeting. Your knuckles whiten on the steering wheel, your heart races, but no amount of frustration moves the sea of brake lights ahead. Now imagine another driver in that same gridlock, windows down, listening to an audiobook, completely at ease. What's the difference? One is fighting reality. The other understands the Stoic secret Epictetus taught 2,000 years ago. Some things are within our power, while others are not. That's the dichotomy of control, the foundation of all Stoic practice. It's not about giving up. It's about channeling your energy where it actually makes a difference. Here's how it works. Make two mental lists. On one side, put everything you truly control: your thoughts, your efforts, your reactions. On the other side, everything else: the weather, other people's opinions, flight delays, the past. Anxiety thrives when we confuse the two. Think of it like a chess game. You can't control your opponent's moves, but you can master your strategy. The moment you stop yelling at the rain for being wet, you free up energy to grab an umbrella or dance in the puddles. Epictetus, born a slave and crippled by his master's cruelty, had every reason to rage against the unfairness of life. Instead, he wrote, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do, and you will go on well." That's the pivot. When your job application gets rejected, you can't rewrite the hiring committee's decision, but you can refine your resume, network with purpose, or even discover a better path. The traffic jam won't vanish if you honk louder, but you can call ahead to explain the delay or use the time to brainstorm your next project. Try this today. Grab a notebook and draw a line down the center. On the left, write 3 things stressing you that you can't control, maybe a relative's health, the stock market, or your boss's mood. On the right, list 1 action you can take in response to each. Suddenly, problems become possibilities. Uncertainty doesn't shrink, but your ability to meet it expands. That's the Stoic shift, from helpless to resourceful, from overwhelmed to poised. Now let's talk about one of the most counterintuitive yet powerful Stoic exercises, Premeditatio Malorum, or the premeditation of evils. At first glance, it might sound pessimistic. Why dwell on what could go wrong? But here's the twist: this isn't about fear, it's about freedom. Seneca, the wealthy philosopher who advised Emperor Nero, called it rehearsing adversity in advance. Picture a sailor checking the weather before setting sail, not to avoid the voyage, but to strengthen the ship. That's the Stoic difference. Take Seneca's own life. At the height of his influence, he was abruptly exiled to Corsica on false charges. Most would crumble, but he'd spent years practicing Premeditatio Malorum. In exile, he wrote, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." Not resignation perspective. By mentally preparing for loss, he wasn't surprised by it. And here's the key: when he was later recalled to Rome, he didn't cling to his restored status. He'd already lost it in his mind, so power couldn't intoxicate him. This practice isn't about imagining disaster, it's about dissolving its shock. Modern psychology calls it stress inoculation. For example, imagine missing your train tomorrow. Feel the frustration rise, then ask, can I take the next one? Is there a cafe nearby to work while I wait? Suddenly, the setback shrinks from a crisis to an inconvenience. The Stoics weren't preparing for suffering, they were preparing their response. Try this tonight. Pick a mundane annoyance, a spilled coffee, a cancelled plan, and walk through it mentally. Visualize staying calm, finding alternatives, even laughing it off. You're not inviting chaos, you're building a reflex of resilience. Because here's the paradox Seneca knew: when you stop fearing life's bumps, you start navigating them with grace. The obstacle becomes not just endurable but expected, and that's when you reclaim control. What if every setback wasn't just something to endure, but something to embrace? That's the heart of Amor Fati, the Stoic practice of loving fate. Nietzsche, who admired the Stoics, called it my formula for greatness. But long before him, Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way. Think of it like a martial artist using an opponent's momentum to their advantage, not resisting the force, but redirecting it. Take a moment to consider the last time life threw you off course. Maybe a project collapsed, a relationship shifted, or an opportunity slipped away. The instinct is to rage against the unfairness. But what if you could train yourself to see the hidden doorway in that wall? Marcus did this daily. When a rival spread lies about him, he wrote, "Thanks to those who wrong me, they give me practice in patience." When illness struck, he noted, this too is material for virtue. He wasn't pretending suffering felt good, he was choosing to mine it for meaning. Here's a modern twist. A tech entrepreneur I know lost his job during a company merger. Instead of fixating on the loss, he used the severance to finally launch his own app, a side project he'd been too afraid to prioritize. 2 years later, he told me, "Getting fired was the best career advice I never asked for." That's Amor Fati in action, seeing the seed of opportunity in the soil of disappointment. Your turn. Pick one recent frustration, a delayed flight, a missed deadline, even a burnt dinner. Now ask, how could this help me? Maybe the delay gave you time to recharge. The deadline taught you to delegate. The ruined meal became a funny story. The Stoics weren't Pollyannas, they were alchemists turning leaden moments into golden wisdom. As Epictetus put it, don't seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly. Not because life gets easier, but because your perspective gets wiser. This isn't about passive acceptance, it's about active reframing. When you stop resisting reality and start engaging with it, something extraordinary happens. uncertainty stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like a collaborator. That traffic jam, a chance to listen to a podcast, that cancelled plan, an evening to finally read that book. Amor Fati doesn't erase life's friction. It gives you the tools to dance across it. There's a peculiar power in closing your eyes and asking, what if I lost this? Not as a morbid exercise, but as a wake-up call to the gifts already in your hands. The Stoics called this negative visualization, a practice Seneca championed in his letters to Lucilius. Picture a wealthy Roman senator surrounded by marble halls and silk robes, writing these words, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself, 'Is this the condition I feared?'" He wasn't punishing himself. He was inoculating his mind against the real poison, taking abundance for granted. We live in a world that screams more likes, more upgrades, more hustle. But here's what Seneca understood: comfort can be a trap. When we stop noticing the roof over our heads or the meal on our plates, we don't just lose gratitude, we start chasing hollow substitutes. Imagine your phone slipping into a storm drain right now. Panic, sure, but also suddenly you'd remember all the times it connected you to a loved one, guided you through a new city, or captured a sunset. That's the irony. We often only appreciate things in their absence. Try this for 2 minutes today. Pick one ordinary comfort, your morning coffee, your favorite sweater, even the ability to walk. Now visualize it gone. Feel the weight of that loss. Then open your eyes. Notice how the coffee's warmth suddenly feels like a gift, how the sweater's softness becomes a small joy. This isn't about fear, it's about resetting your attention. Seneca wrote, "He who has made a fair compact with poverty is rich." He wasn't praising hardship, he was revealing a secret. When you regularly taste life without its comforts, you stop needing them to feel whole. Modern research backs this up. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation, the way we quickly normalize luxuries until they feel like necessities. The antidote: interrupt the cycle. That's why some of the most grounded people you'll meet are those who have faced real loss. They don't just have things, they see them. The Stoic twist: you don't have to wait for tragedy to cultivate that clarity. So tonight, as you charge your devices or tuck into bed, pause. Ask, what if this were my last night with this pillow, this blanket, this quiet? You might find yourself pulling the covers closer, savoring the ordinary magic you'd overlooked, because gratitude isn't just a feeling, it's a practice. And sometimes you have to imagine the dark to truly see the light. Standing on a beach at night, staring up at the Milky Way's shimmering arc, have you ever felt that sudden shift? The way your daily worries seem to shrink against the vastness of the cosmos. That's the essence of the view from above, a Stoic exercise Marcus Aurelius used to dissolve anxiety. In his meditations, he wrote, "Think of the whole universe of matter and how small your share. Think of the whole expanse of time and how brief your slice." This wasn't nihilism, it was liberation. By mentally zooming out, seeing his life as one thread in humanity's tapestry, he could face challenges without being crushed by them. Picture this: 2,000 years ago, Rome's emperors built colossal statues of themselves, believing their legacies would endure forever. Today, those same statues lie broken in museums, their names half forgotten. Marcus, despite wielding immense power, kept a different image in mind. Soon you'll be ashes or bones, a mere name at best, and even that is just sound and smoke. He wasn't denying life's value, he was clarifying it. When you realize the meeting you're dreading or the criticism stinging you won't matter in 100 years, let alone 1,000, you gain something priceless: perspective. Here's how to practice it tonight. Before bed, step outside or gaze out a window. Imagine your day rewinding like a film. The spilled coffee, the tense email, the small victories. all unfolding on a tiny blue dot orbiting an average star in one of billions of galaxies. Then pull back further, see the centuries rolling like waves, empires rising, artists creating, children laughing, wars raging, all fading into time's river. Your worries, just one ripple. This isn't meant to diminish your experiences, but to expand your context, as Marcus noted. How quickly all things disappear in the universe, the bodies themselves, in time, the memories of them. Modern science offers a startling parallel. The Hubble Space Telescope's ultra-deep field image reveals thousands of galaxies in a patch of sky no bigger than a grain of sand held at arm's length. Each galaxy contains billions of stars. Suddenly, your rush hour traffic or inbox stress seems almost comically small. But here's the magic: that cosmic perspective doesn't erase meaning, it distills it. When you grasp how fleeting and rare your existence is, you stop sweating the trivial and start savoring the essential. Try this twist: pair the view from above with gratitude. After zooming out to the cosmic scale, zoom back into one detail from your day: a shared laugh, a warm meal, sunlight through leaves. Against the backdrop of infinity, those ordinary moments become extraordinary. Marcus did this daily, reminding himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say, not as morbid pressure, but as urgent clarity. The meeting that felt like a crisis, just a conversation. The dream that feels unattainable, worth pursuing precisely because time is short. This practice isn't about escaping life, it's about entering it more fully. Astronauts who have seen Earth from orbit often describe the overview effect: a profound shift in awareness where borders vanish and petty conflicts seem absurd. You don't need a spaceship to access that wisdom. Tonight, let the stars or even a photo of them remind you your struggles are real, but so is your ability to rise above them. After all, as Marcus whispered to himself 2 millennia ago, the universe is change, life is understanding. Imagine waking every morning to a whispered reminder: this day could be your last. Not as a threat, but as a gift, the ultimate focusing lens. The Stoics called this Memento Mori, remembering death to remember how to live, while modern YOLO culture often twists this into reckless indulgence. The ancients saw deeper. Take Cato the Younger, the Roman senator who chose suicide over surrendering his principles to Julius Caesar's tyranny. His final hours weren't spent in panic, but in rereading Plato's Phaedo on the immortality of the soul, then calmly falling on his sword. To his friends' grief, he chided them. Why weep for me when you should weep for the man who doesn't understand how little it takes to live a good life? That's the power of Memento Mori, not to terrify but to clarify. Mortality's shadow sharpens life's edges. Picture 2 artists, one with endless time, dawdling over sketches, the other with a deadline, pouring soul into every stroke. Which creates more masterpieces? The Stoics argued that death isn't life's opposite, it's its co-author. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do, say, and think, not as morbid fixation, but as creative fuel. Modern culture often avoids death's gaze, treating it like a spoiler to life's movie. But what if we leaned in? A hospice nurse once told me her patients never lamented working too little or owning too little. Their regrets centered on love unexpressed, adventures deferred, moments missed while scrolling. That's Memento Mori in raw form. The entrepreneur who starts that passion project after a cancer scare, the parent who puts down their phone to truly listen, the artist who ships their work despite fear. These aren't acts of despair, but of defiant aliveness. Here's the practice. Place a small object on your desk, a skull ring, a withered leaf, even a pebble as a physical memento mori. Each time you notice it, ask, if this were my final year, would I be doing what I'm doing right now? Not to provoke rash decisions, but to distill authentic ones. Steve Jobs famously said, "Remembering I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make big choices." The deadline strips away pretense, yet there's a crucial difference between stoic urgency and viral YOLO. One is a call to depth, the other often veers into distraction. Bungee jumping because life's short might give a rush, but so might finally writing that novel or repairing that relationship. Memento Mori asks, what legacy vibrates beyond the moment? Epictetus put it bluntly, stop letting your dying happen by accident, let it inform your living on purpose. So tonight, as you turn out the light, try this. List 3 things you'd prioritize if you had just 1 month left. Then here's the challenge, ask why you're not prioritizing them now. Time's scarcity isn't meant to haunt you, it's meant to hone you. Because when you stop pretending you'll live forever, you start living like today matters. And that's the secret the Stoics guarded. Death isn't the end of meaning, it's the beginning. Ever notice how the softest mattress can leave you with the stiffest back? There's a paradox at play. Comfort, when overindulged, weakens us. Enter voluntary discomfort, the Stoic practice of deliberately choosing small hardships to fortify your resilience. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, put it bluntly, how can someone become brave if they only seek warmth and comfort? He wasn't advocating suffering for its own sake, but rather treating life like an athlete treats training, pushing limits in controlled doses to grow stronger. Take cold showers. Millions swear by them, not because they're pleasant, but because they teach a vital lesson. Discomfort is survivable. That first icy blast triggers panic. Your body screams to escape. But breathe through it and something shifts. The water doesn't warm up, you do. Modern science confirms this. Cold exposure builds stress tolerance by lowering your fight or flight reflex. The Stoics knew it intuitively. By willingly stepping into minor discomforts, you rewire your relationship with adversity. Suddenly, a missed meal isn't a crisis. It's a chance to discover you're tougher than your cravings. Musonius took this further. He argued that luxury foods dull gratitude, while simple fare course bread, plain water, sharpens appreciation. Picture a modern parallel, scrolling social media on a plush couch versus sitting quietly with a book on a hardwood floor. One numbs, the other heightens awareness. This isn't about austerity, it's about interrupting autopilot. When Seneca ate nothing but stale bread for days, he wrote, I've discovered that hunger isn't to be feared, only my fear of hunger. Here's your challenge, a 24-hour comfort fast. Pick one day to strip away a modern luxury, no screens, no sugary snacks, no air conditioning. Notice the cravings rise, then notice something profound. You're still here, like a muscle stretching past its usual range. These small deprivations expand your capacity to handle life's bigger blows. An executive I coached did this by commuting without podcasts, just her thoughts. At first, it felt unbearable, she admitted. By week 3, I'd solved 2 major work problems in that silence. Athletes understand this instinctively. A runner doesn't wait for a race to feel ready. They train in rain, heat, and fatigue. Voluntary discomfort is mental cross-training. When you choose to walk instead of Uber or draft emails by hand before typing, you're not punishing yourself. You're rehearsing for life's inevitable disruptions. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Resilience isn't built in the crisis. It's built in 100 small moments when you prove to yourself, I can handle more than I thought. So tonight, skip the dessert, leave your phone in another room, sleep with 1 less blanket. These aren't deprivations, they're tiny revolutions against a culture that conflates ease with happiness. As Musonius taught, what's harmful isn't going without, it's fearing to go without. Because when you stop running from discomfort, you start discovering a surprising superpower, the ability to thrive anywhere. Marcus Aurelius never intended for the world to read his private writings. Those notebooks, now known as meditations, were his personal training ground, a space where the most powerful man in Rome wrestled with his own humanity. Picture this: by candlelight, after a day of crushing imperial duties, he'd turn inward, asking himself questions like, "Why should I feel anger at the world?" The world doesn't even notice. This wasn't diary writing as we often practice it, vague recountings of events or emotional venting. It was structured self-dialogue, a mirror held up to his soul. And here's the key: you don't need to rule an empire to benefit from the same practice. Modern journaling often falls into two traps. Either we scribble surface-level summaries, had coffee with Sam, work was busy, or we spiral into unchecked rumination. Stoic journaling is different. It's a disciplined excavation, a way to separate what happened from how you responded. Take Marcus's entry after a frustrating council meeting. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant." Notice what he's doing. He's not just venting about difficult colleagues, he's preemptively framing his own mindset. That's the shift from passive recording to active self-coaching. So how do you start? First, steal a page from the Stoics. Write to yourself, not for yourself. Imagine your journal as a conversation with your wisest, most grounded version. Begin with these 3 prompts. 1. What did I truly control today? Not your boss's mood or the traffic, but your preparation, your tone, your effort. 2. Where did I complain about things I couldn't change? That groan when rain cancelled your picnic, the irritation at a coworker's tardiness. Highlight those moments not to judge yourself, but to spot where resistance wasted your energy. 3. What's one thing I'll do differently tomorrow? Not a vague resolution, but a concrete adjustment. Maybe it's pausing before reacting to criticism, or choosing the stairs over the elevator to practice voluntary discomfort. Here's the magic of this approach. Over time, patterns emerge. You'll notice how often you fret over things outside your control, or how quickly small inconveniences derail your peace. A tech CEO I know keeps 2 journals, one for traditional notes, another strictly for Stoic reflections. It's like having a built-in accountability partner, she told me. When I reread last month's entries, I see the same triggers tripping me up, but also how far I've come in catching them faster. The Stoics believed writing wasn't just about recording thoughts, but refining them. Seneca compared it to sifting gold from dirt. The act of putting words on paper forces clarity. Try this tonight. Instead of listing your day's events, write a single sentence addressing each Stoic prompt. Then imagine your future self reading it a year from now. Would they nod in recognition or smile at how much you've grown? That's the real power of journaling like Marcus. You're not just documenting your life, you're drafting the next, wiser version of yourself. Ever had a thought grab you by the throat? Some worry or anger that loops in your mind like a broken record? The Stoics had a name for this mental static: impressions. Not facts, not commands, just passing mental weather. Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed his enslavement into a masterclass on inner freedom, gave us a game-changing tool: cognitive distancing. Imagine standing on a riverbank, watching leaves float by. That's your mind. The leaves, those are your thoughts. You don't have to jump in after them. Epictetus used a vivid metaphor: a barking dog. Walk past one that's yapping furiously, and you have 2 choices. You can stop, yell back, and escalate the chaos, or keep walking, recognizing the noise has nothing to do with you. Our thoughts are like that dog. When your boss's terse email triggers panic, or a stranger's glare sparks insecurity, that's the bark. The power lies in your response. Do you leash yourself to the emotion or observe it and move forward? Let's make this practical. Say you open an email criticizing your work. Your heart races, fingers hover over the keyboard to fire back a defense. Here's the Stoic pause. First, label it. This is an impression, not reality. Next, ask Epictetus' clarifying question. Is this within my control? The sender's tone isn't, but your reply is. Now, role-play the two paths. Path 1, you react instantly, fueled by heat, drafting a message you'll regret. Path 2, you close the laptop, take a walk. Return later to write. I appreciate the feedback. Let's discuss how to improve. The content of the email didn't change, your relationship to it did. Modern psychology echoes this ancient wisdom. Cognitive behavioral therapy calls it diffusion, stepping back from thoughts to see them as separate from yourself. A study at Harvard found that people who mentally labeled emotions, "I'm noticing anxiety," rather than identifying with them, "I'm anxious," handled stress with markedly more clarity. The Stoics were pioneers of this mental decluttering. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. By treating thoughts as visitors, not dictators, you reclaim agency." Try this today. Carry a small notebook. Each time a strong emotion hits, jot it down as an external observation impression. Frustration over delayed train or impression. Pride after completing the presentation. Like a scientist taking field notes, you'll start spotting patterns. That meeting where you felt slighted, maybe it wasn't personal, just your mind's old habit of expecting the worst. Epictetus put it bluntly, men are disturbed not by things but by the views they take of them. The barking dog doesn't stop barking, but you stop mistaking its noise for truth. And that's the secret. When you stop conflating thoughts with identity, uncertainty loses its fangs. You're no longer at the mercy of every mental gust. You become the steady tree that bends without breaking. So next time a thought tries to hijack your peace, greet it like a Stoic. Another impression. Let's see if it deserves my attention. Someone posts a vague comment online. Maybe it says, "Some people just don't get it," and instantly your stomach drops. That's about me. Your fingers itch to respond, defend, maybe even fire back. But here's the question. Did that person actually slight you, or did your mind tell you they did? This is where the Stoics introduce the discipline of assent, the crucial pause between an event and your belief about it. Epictetus, who endured slavery before becoming philosophy's most famous teacher, put it bluntly, it's not events that disturb people, but their judgments about events. In other words, the world doesn't hurt you, your unchecked assumptions do. Think of your mind as a courtroom. Every impression, that sideways glance from a coworker, the friend who didn't text back, is like a witness taking the stand. The discipline of assent is your gavel. Instead of instantly accepting every thought as truth, you cross-examine it. Is this interpretation factual or just familiar? Take that social media post. Option 1, you assent immediately, "They're mocking me," and spiral into resentment. Option 2, you pause, maybe they're referring to a news story. Maybe it's an inside joke with someone else. The post didn't change, your assent to its meaning did. Modern psychology calls this cognitive reappraisal, but the Stoics were there first. Marcus Aurelius practiced it daily, writing, "Today I'll meet interference, ingratitude, insolence, but I cannot be angry, for these things cannot harm my true self." Notice what he's doing, not denying reality, but consciously choosing his verdict on it. A CEO client of mine used this when her team missed a deadline. Her first thought, "They don't respect my leadership." Then she applied the discipline of assent. The facts, the project was late, the story she'd added, it was personal. By withholding immediate assent, she discovered the real issue, a supplier delay no one had mentioned. Here's your challenge. Pick one moment tomorrow when a negative assumption arises. Your partner seems distant. Instead of concluding they're upset with me, ask, what else could this mean? Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're mentally drafting a grocery list. The goal isn't to Pollyanna your way through life. It's to recognize how often you've been the silent co-author of your own suffering. As Epictetus reminds us, we suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgments about them. When you stop conflating thoughts with truth, you start seeing the space between stimulus and response, and that's where your freedom lies. When you're stuck in traffic, fuming over the delay, it's easy to feel uniquely wronged, as if the universe singled you out for frustration. But glance around. Every driver in that gridlock shares your exact predicament. That's sympatheia, the Stoic concept of interconnectedness in action. Hierocles, a Stoic philosopher, visualized this with concentric circles. At the center, you, then family, friends, community, humanity, all living things. The practice gradually draw those outer circles inward. The stranger honking behind you isn't an antagonist. They're a parent rushing to daycare, a nurse heading home after a double shift, a fellow human navigating the same imperfect systems. Consider the pandemic. At first, masks and lockdowns felt like personal impositions, but those who grasped sympatheia saw deeper. My mask protects your grandmother. Your sacrifice preserves my neighbor's livelihood. Modern crises, from climate change to economic instability, reveal how deeply our fates intertwine. When wildfires rage, the smoke doesn't check political affiliations before crossing state lines. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire spanning continents, wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." He wasn't preaching altruism, he was stating fact. Your well-being is tethered to the cashiers, the farmers, the scientists halfway across the globe. Here's how to practice this today. Pick one challenge weighing on you, maybe rising rents or workplace stress. Now ask, who else feels this? You'll find allies where you once saw only obstacles. A young teacher facing burnout realizes her colleagues share the same exhaustion, and together they advocate for better resources. A community garden springs up when neighbors recognize their mutual struggle with food deserts. Sympatheia transforms isolation into collective agency. Hierarchical circles aren't about erasing boundaries, they're about recognizing shared stakes. When you donate blood, you'll never meet the recipient, but your act reverberates through the web of lives connected to theirs. The Stoics knew this instinctively. Epictetus, born into slavery, taught, "You are a citizen of the world," not a poetic notion, but a practical one. Your resilience grows when you stop seeing yourself as a lone ship in a storm and start seeing the fleet. So this week, do this small experiment. Notice one frustration, long lines, noisy construction, even a rude comment. Then mentally trace it outward, the line. Full of people equally impatient, the construction crew working overtime to feed their families, the harsh words often spoken by someone drowning in their own unseen struggles. Sympatheia doesn't excuse harm, but it dissolves the illusion of separation. And in that space, uncertainty becomes less terrifying because you're no longer facing it alone. Failure, that word alone can send shivers down any entrepreneur's spine. But what if we've been reading it backward? Marcus Aurelius' famous line, "The impediment to action advances action." What stands in the way becomes the way isn't just poetic, it's a blueprint for transformation. Take the story of a tech founder whose app crashed spectacularly on launch day. Servers melted under unexpected traffic, investors panicked, and headlines called it a flop. Most would see disaster. He saw data. Those crashes revealed unanticipated demand. the backlash highlighted passionate early adopters. 2 years later, his rebuilt platform became a unicorn, not despite that failure, but because of it. This is the Stoic alchemy of obstacles. Marcus didn't say obstacles disappear, he said they redirect. When a river encounters a boulder, it doesn't stop, it finds a new path, carving deeper channels in the process. Your current hurdle, a rejected proposal, a strained relationship, even a health setback holds that same potential. The key, probe for the hidden gains. A chef whose restaurant burned down once told me, "The fire forced me to redesign everything. My new place became what I'd always wanted but was too afraid to try." Here's your challenge. Grab a notebook and pick one obstacle you're facing right now. Now list 3 ways it could secretly serve you. Stuck in a job you dislike. It might be teaching you patience, clarifying what you truly value, or pushing you to build side skills. A creative block, perhaps it's inviting you to explore new mediums or rest your overworked mind. Even physical limitations like the illness that forced Frida Kahlo to paint from bed can become unexpected catalysts. The obstacle isn't just something to overcome, it's the whetstone sharpening your edge. Marcus ruled an empire plagued by wars and plagues, yet he wrote, "The blazing fire makes flames and brightness out of everything thrown into it. Your obstacles are no different." That startup founder didn't just fix his app, he leveraged its very public failure into a marketing narrative about resilience. The crash wasn't the end, it was the origin story. So ask yourself, what if this hurdle isn't blocking your path but revealing a better one? The impediment doesn't just bend, it builds, and sometimes the only way forward is through. There's a split-second moment when someone cuts you off in traffic or snaps at you in a meeting. A flash where your body tenses, your pulse spikes, and your mouth opens to fire back. That's the crossroads between reaction and response. Seneca, who wrote an entire treatise on anger, called this gap the first movement, the involuntary rush of emotion. What happens next, though, is where Stoic practice shines. He observed, anger is brief insanity, but also gave us the antidote. The greatest remedy for anger is delay. Not suppression, not denial, just a conscious pause to let the storm pass before choosing your next move. Picture this, you're at a dinner party when someone mocks your career choice. Your face flushes, your fists clench, the ancient reaction, lash out or slink away. The Stoic response, imagine Seneca whispering in your ear. Does their opinion change your skills? Does their rudeness erase your progress? Now, instead of sparring or shrinking, you might smile and say, "Interesting perspective. What work excites you these days?" Not to deflect, but to redirect the energy toward curiosity. You haven't ignored the insult. You've simply refused to let it dictate your behavior. Seneca's anger management drills were shockingly modern. He advised his students to rehearse provocations like an actor rehearsing lines. Try this today. Script a Stoic reply to a hypothetical slight. If a coworker takes credit for your idea, instead of seething silently or exploding publicly, prepare. Glad you found that concept useful. I'd love to collaborate more directly next time. No passive aggression, no surrender, just calm assertion that resets boundaries without burning bridges. The brilliance of non-reactivity lies in its ripple effects. A CEO I coached used this when a competitor spread false rumors about a company. Her team wanted to retaliate with a PR attack. Instead, she channeled Seneca. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. She issued a single factual correction, then doubled down on her client's results. Within months, the competitor's smear campaign backfired, their credibility crumbled, while her restraint earned industry respect. Here's the deeper truth: non-reactivity isn't about becoming a doormat. It's about reclaiming your agency. When you refuse to let others' actions puppet your emotions, you expose their weakness. They can't control you unless you cooperate. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Next time tension flares, borrow a Stoic trick. Count to 5 or 50 before speaking. Watch how the urge to react dissipates like mist, leaving clarity in its wake. The art isn't in avoiding the spark, but in choosing not to fuel the fire. Imagine standing before a jury that holds your life in their hands, not for a crime, but for speaking uncomfortable truths. This was Socrates' reality. Offered a chance to recount his teachings and walk free, he chose poison instead. An unexamined life is not worth living, he declared, turning his execution into philosophy's defining moment. What seems like defeat to the world was, by Stoic standards, the ultimate victory, because Socrates prized something no verdict could touch: his integrity. Modern culture obsesses over scorecards, job titles, bank balances, follower counts, but Stoicism flips the script. The only true good is virtuous character. The only real bad is its absence. Fame ephemeral, wealth fleeting, even health can falter, but your honesty in negotiations, your courage during criticism, your kindness when no one's watching, those are possessions no market crash can erase. Marcus Aurelius ruled the known world, yet wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be." Be one. Consider two entrepreneurs. One cuts corners to land a lucrative client, boasting about revenue while ignoring ethical compromises. The other loses the deal by refusing to mislead, then spends the year refining an honest product. Fast forward 5 years, the first faces lawsuits and shattered trust. The second's integrity becomes their brand's cornerstone, attracting loyal customers. Society calls the first a winner in the short term, but Stoicism asks a starker question: who sleeps with a clear conscience? Here's where practice bites. That time you stayed silent when a colleague was unfairly blamed to avoid office politics, or when you exaggerated qualifications on a dating profile, rationalizing, "Everyone does it." These aren't just moral quibbles, they're fractures in your character's foundation. Epictetus, who knew slavery's dehumanization firsthand, taught, "Circumstances don't make the man, they reveal him." Your choices under pressure are the chisels shaping who you become. Try this tonight. Replay one decision from this week where convenience clashed with principle. Maybe you laughed at an offensive joke to fit in or took credit for shared work. Now, rewrite the scene with virtue as the priority. The goal isn't self-flagellation, it's pattern recognition. Like a sculptor stepping back to assess their work, these mental rehearsals refine your ethical reflexes, because when chaos comes, and it will, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll default to your daily practice. Socrates' jury thought they were ending his influence by sentencing him to death. They didn't grasp that character outlives its container. 2 millennia later, we quote him not for his property or prestige, but for the unshakable convictions that no hemlock could dissolve. Your legacy won't be what you accumulated, but what you stood for when accumulation was possible. As Seneca reminded Lucilius, wherever there is a human being, there's an opportunity for kindness. Not success, not victory, just the quiet, relentless work of being good. Dawn breaks, the world still quiet, your mind not yet cluttered with the day's demands. This is the golden hour the Stoics revered. Marcus Aurelius began each morning with a simple ritual. He'd rise before the sun, light a lamp, and write reminders to himself like, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant." Not to breed cynicism, but to steel himself for reality. Compare that to the modern reflex, reaching for your phone before your feet hit the floor. flooding your brain with notifications, headlines, and other people's agendas before you've even had a chance to set your own. Here's the difference between those two starts. One primes you for agency, the other for reactivity. Think of your mind as a clear pond at sunrise. Toss in a handful of pebbles, your own chosen thoughts, and the ripples spread intentionally. But throw in a boulder someone else's urgent email, a social media feud, and the water churns chaotically. That's why Marcus didn't check imperial dispatches first thing, he checked himself. So how do you steal this practice? Try a 5-minute Stoic morning. Minute 1, sit upright, no screens, no distractions, and take 3 deep breaths. Not just inhales, but proper diaphragm-expanding breaths, the kind that signal your nervous system, we're not under attack yet. Minute 2, set your intention, not a to-do list, but a quality you want to embody today. Patience during meetings, courage to voice that idea. Write it down like a contract with yourself. Minute 3, rehearse challenges. Visualize your coworker's annoying habit or that traffic jam you dread. Now picture yourself responding with calm detachment, as if observing the scene from a mountaintop. Minutes 4 and 5, gratitude. Not vague, I'm thankful for life statements, but specific, tactile things, the warmth of your coffee mug, the fact your knees bend without pain, the quiet before the house wakes up. This isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. Studies show morning routines that include intention setting and visualization prime the brain's prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for focus and emotional regulation. Meanwhile, phone checking first thing spikes cortisol, putting you on defense before you've even brushed your teeth. A tech executive I know replaced his morning scroll with this Stoic ritual and reported, "It's like gaining a head start on the day. By the time chaos hits, I've already anchored myself." The magic lies in the cumulative effect. Over time, these dawn moments compound like interest. You're not just preparing for today's challenges, you're rewiring your default responses. Marcus knew this. His journal entries weren't lofty musings, they were drills. When he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events," he wasn't pontificating, he was practicing. So tonight, leave your phone outside the bedroom. Tomorrow, gift yourself those 5 minutes of stillness. The sun will rise regardless, but how you meet it determines whether you'll face the day as a pawn or a player. As dusk settles and the day's noise fades, there's a quiet power in turning the spotlight inward, not to judge, but to refine. Seneca, the philosopher who tutored Nero, ended each evening with a radical act of honesty. He'd extinguish the lamps, sit in darkness, and ask himself 3 piercing questions. What evils have you cured today? What faults have you resisted? In what aspect are you better? Imagine doing this nightly, not as self-criticism, but as a craftsman inspecting their tools. The goal wasn't to tally failures, but to spot patterns, those subtle drifts from principle that accumulate like sediment in a riverbed. Your version of this ritual can start tonight. First question, what did I learn? Not just facts or skills, but deeper insights. Maybe you discovered patience wears thin after 6 hours of meetings, or that saying no to a draining request left space for creativity. Seneca called these daily gains, the small deposits in your wisdom account. Next, where did I stray from my values? Be specific. Did you gossip when you vowed to uplift others? Scroll mindlessly when you meant to read. The Stoics weren't interested in guilt trips, they sought course corrections. Finally, how can I improve? Not vague resolutions like be kinder, but tactical tweaks. Tomorrow, I'll pause 10 seconds before reacting to criticism, or I'll schedule creative work before my energy dips. A Wall Street trader I know adapted this practice after a brutal losing streak. His nightly reviews revealed a pattern: impulsive trades after skipping lunch. Once he spotted the trigger, he packed protein bars and scheduled walks during market lulls. Within months, his performance stabilized not because he became a different person, but because he finally saw himself clearly. That's the magic of Seneca's audit. It turns hindsight into foresight. This isn't about perfection. Some nights your answers will be messy. Maybe you snapped at your partner or procrastinated on a dream project, the Stoic twist. Those stumbles are data, not indictments. Epictetus framed it perfectly. No great thing is created suddenly, any more than a bunch of grapes or a fig. If you tell me you desire a fig, I answer that there must be time. Let it first blossom, then bear fruit, then ripen. Your evening review is the watering can nurturing that growth. So tonight, before sleep claims you, steal 5 minutes. No journal, a voice memo works. No grand insights, start small. Even noticing one moment where you chose courage over comfort or distraction over depth plants a seed. Because here's what Seneca knew: days become weeks, weeks become years, and those nightly whispers to yourself, they become the compass that steers your life. You've meticulously planned a dream vacation, flights booked, itinerary set, excitement building. Then, a week before departure, a family emergency arises. The trip evaporates, disappointment crashes over you like a wave. But what if, from the very beginning, you'd whispered 2 words to yourself, fate permitting? That's the Stoic reserve clause, a mental footnote attached to every plan that acknowledges life's unpredictability. Seneca put it bluntly: nothing is ours except time. Not outcomes, not guarantees, just our ability to navigate whatever comes. The reserve clause isn't about pessimism or resignation. It's about precision. When you say, "I'll finish the project by Friday if nothing prevents me," you're not undermining your commitment. You're distinguishing between effort and result. Ancient Stoics compared this to an archer's aim. You can perfect your stance, draw the bowstring taut, and release the arrow flawlessly. But once it's in flight, a gust of wind or a moving target lies beyond your control. The skill was in the shot, not the outcome. Take a modern example. A startup founder sets a launch date, telling investors, "We'll go live in June, barring unforeseen delays." Does this sound like weakness? Not at all. It's transparency. When supply chain issues inevitably arise, as they did for one entrepreneur I coached, she didn't crumble under self-recrimination. Instead, she calmly adjusted timelines, explaining, "This is what barring unforeseen meant." Her team admired her poise, her backers respected her realism. Here's how to practice this today. Pick one goal, maybe a gym commitment or a creative deadline. Rewrite it with the reserve clause: "I'll attend 3 sessions this week, health permitting." Or, "The manuscript draft will be done by month's end if circumstances allow." Notice the shift. You've swapped rigid expectations for adaptable determination. The goal hasn't softened, your grip on it has. Epictetus, who faced exile and disability, taught, "Don't demand that events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you'll go on well." The reserve clause is that wisdom in action. Next time you jot down a plan, add those 2 silent words, not as a disclaimer, but as a reminder. You're not the sole author of this story, just the protagonist navigating each twist with grace. Amid the honking horns and jostling crowds of your morning commute, there's a quiet truth the Stoics uncovered 2,000 years ago. Your mind can be an unassailable fortress, even when the world feels like a siege. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled Rome during wars and plagues, scribbled in his journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He wasn't just waxing poetic, he was drafting blueprints for inner architecture. Picture a medieval castle, thick walls to repel invaders, a courtyard for calm reflection, and a tower offering a clear view beyond the chaos. That's your inner citadel, the noise outside, just weather against stone. Let's make this tangible. Next time you're stuck in a noisy subway or gridlock traffic, try this Stoic drill. First, anchor your attention to your breath, not to escape the chaos, but to observe it without letting it dictate your state. The car alarm blaring, notice it, then return to your center. The loud conversation nearby, let it pass like clouds across your mental sky. Marcus called this retreating into your citadel, not as avoidance but as conscious choice. A CEO I know practices this during flight delays. While others fume at gate changes, she pulls out a book, thinking, "This is my chance to train for bigger disruptions." The brilliance of this practice lies in its scalability. That co-worker who constantly interrupts your focus, they're not an annoyance, they're your sparring partner for patience. The endless notifications pinging your phone, each is a test of your attention's drawbridge. Will you lower it for every invader, or raise it until you choose to engage? Epictetus, who endured slavery's ultimate loss of control, put it starkly, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." Your citadel's strength isn't measured in quiet moments, but in storms. Here's the twist: building this fortress doesn't require isolation. Stoicism isn't about withdrawing from life, it's about engaging with clarity. Imagine two chefs in a bustling kitchen. One is rattled by every shout and clatter, their focus shattering like dropped plates. The other moves through the same chaos with steady precision, their mind a calm eye in the hurricane. Both face identical external conditions. The difference is internal architecture. Tonight, try a 5-minute Citadel audit. Sit quietly and recall one moment today when external noise disrupted your peace. Now, reimagine it. How could you've anchored to your breath, redirected your focus? The goal isn't self-judgment, it's blueprint refinement. Because with each rehearsal, you're not just enduring life's noise, you're mastering the art of standing firm within it. The world will always have its chaos, but behind your walls you hold the keys to quiet. Admiral James Stockdale spent 7 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, subjected to torture and solitary confinement. Yet when asked how he survived, he credited Stoicism, not blind optimism, but brutal preparation paired with radical acceptance. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, he later wrote. This is the paradox of preparation, visualizing every possible hardship while simultaneously releasing attachment to outcomes. Stockdale rehearsed interrogations in his mind, anticipating every question his captors might ask, every method they might use to break him. But here's the crucial twist: he also accepted that no amount of mental rehearsal could guarantee his survival. He prepared like everything depended on him. He surrendered like everything depended on fate. Now contrast this with how most of us approach high-stakes moments, say, a job interview. We either over-prepare to the point of anxiety, scripting every answer until we sound robotic, or we wing it entirely, hoping luck will carry us. The Stoic approach splits the difference. First, the meticulous rehearsal. Research the company, anticipate tough questions, even practice in the mirror. Visualize technical difficulties with your Zoom call, the interviewer seeming disinterested or blanking on your prepared points. This isn't pessimism, it's inoculation. But then comes the counterintuitive step. You mentally file the interview under things outside my control. The hiring manager's mood, the strength of other candidates, even your own nerves in the moment. None of these belong to you. A tech executive I coached used this method before a make-or-break investor pitch. She spent weeks preparing, even role-playing brutal feedback sessions with her team. But on the morning of the presentation, she told herself, "I've done everything possible. Now the result is no longer mine to dictate." When the projector malfunctioned mid-pitch, she didn't panic. She'd already visualized that scenario. And when the investors passed on her proposal, she reframed it as data. Either my idea needs refinement, or these weren't the right partners. 6 months later, she landed a better deal with a firm that truly aligned with her vision. Here's how to practice this today. Pick an upcoming challenge, a difficult conversation, a performance review, even a first date. Spend 10 minutes envisioning worst-case scenarios. You stumble over your words, they criticize your work, the chemistry falls flat. Now script your ideal response to each. This isn't about avoiding discomfort, it's about proving to yourself that you can handle it. Then whisper Stockdale's mantra, I control my effort, not the outcome. The magic lies in that tension between rigorous preparation and emotional detachment. You're not guaranteeing success, you're eliminating the fear of failure. Because when you've already survived the worst in your mind, the real thing loses its fangs. The Stoics knew this secret centuries ago. Seneca wrote, the gladiator devises his plan of attack only after he has seen his opponent's swordplay. Preparation sharpens your blade, detachment steadies your hand. Whether you're facing literal prison bars or just the paralyzing fear of rejection, the formula holds: rehearse everything, cling to nothing. That's how you turn potential disasters into mere obstacles, and obstacles, as Marcus Aurelius reminded us, become the way. There's a hidden danger in mastering Stoicism, the risk of becoming what one philosopher called a virtue signaler in a toga. Picture someone who's read every translation of Marcus Aurelius, drops Epictetus quotes in casual conversation, and views life's challenges with a detached smirk. You're upset about your flight cancellation. How unstoic of you. That's not wisdom, it's spiritual arrogance wearing philosophy as a costume. Even Cato the Younger, the Stoic martyr who chose death over compromising his principles, had the humility to study with an Epicurean teacher. His famous words, I would rather know the truth than remain consistent with my own opinions. Modern life hack culture worsens this trap. Social media brims with influencers selling Stoicism as a quick fix. 5 quotes to bulletproof your mind. As if ancient wisdom could be distilled into Instagram captions. But true Stoicism isn't about performing calm. It's about practicing it when no one's watching. The difference is stark. One entrepreneur I know built a brand around Stoic catchphrases while secretly raging at employees behind closed doors. Another, a nurse working night shifts in a pandemic ward, never quoted philosophy but lived its core lesson daily, showing up when it mattered without fanfare. Here's the litmus test. Where do you assume mastery prematurely? Maybe it's dismissing a colleague's stress as weakness because Stoics don't complain. Or refusing therapy for anxiety, believing meditation alone should suffice. Even Seneca, for all his brilliance, wrote letters seeking his friend Lucilius' counsel. The moment Stoicism becomes a cudgel to judge others or a shield against growth, it ceases to be Stoic. Try this today. Identify one area where you've conflated familiarity with expertise. Perhaps you've memorized meditations but still lose sleep over minor criticisms. Or you lecture others on Amor Fati while resisting feedback. Write it down, not to self-flagellate, but to spot the gap between theory and practice. Because the real measure of philosophy isn't what you know, it's how often you remember how much you don't. As Epictetus warned, it's impossible to learn what you think you already know. The path to wisdom begins with that admission and stays open only with relentless humility. Ever notice how the smallest irritations, a dripping faucet, a slow Wi-Fi connection, someone chewing loudly, can unravel your composure faster than major crises? Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed his enslavement into a masterclass on inner freedom, had a two-word prescription for this modern malaise: bear and forbear. Not as a call to passive suffering, but as deliberate training for life's inevitable friction. Picture a samurai honing their blade by slicing through bamboo. Each minor irritation is your bamboo. The goal isn't to eliminate discomfort, but to discover you can withstand far more than you think. Take the modern workplace. Open-plan offices serve up a buffet of distractions: keyboard clatter, overlapping conversations, the colleague who hums off-key. Most of us react like startled cats sighing loudly, shooting daggers with our eyes, or firing off passive-aggressive Slack messages. But what if you treated those noises like a Stoic gym? Each time you resist the urge to complain, you're not just sparing your coworkers, you're strengthening your focus muscles. A software developer I know tried this, tallying every time he bit back a grievance during sprint meetings. By week's end, he realized most irritations evaporated if left unvoiced, and his productivity soared. Epictetus' wisdom cuts deeper than modern, grin and bear it platitudes. Forbearance isn't suppression, it's conscious choice. Imagine two hikers caught in sudden rain. One curses, hunches miserably, and rushes for shelter. The other pauses, feels the cool water on their face, and notices how the forest smells richer in the damp. Same rain, different relationship to it. That's the bear and forbear pivot, transforming annoyance into observation. Here's your challenge: a no-grievance day. Carry a small notebook or use your phone's notes app to tally every time you feel the itch to complain about traffic, weather, a late delivery. Don't judge yourself, just log the impulse. You'll likely discover two things. First, how often petty frustrations dominate your mental bandwidth. Second, how many dissipate when deprived of the oxygen of your attention. Like a fire left unfed, they flicker out. There's neuroscience behind this ancient practice. Each time you resist vocalizing irritation, you weaken the neural pathway linking discomfort to reaction. A study at UCLA found that participants who silently observed annoyances without reacting showed reduced amygdala activation, the brain's alarm center, over time. Epictetus would have nodded knowingly. His bear and forbear wasn't about bottling up emotions, it was about rewiring your relationship to them. Try this twist: reframe irritations as reminders. That buzzing construction drill, a cue to practice focus. The long grocery line, a chance to stand in patient stillness. Even pain can become a teacher. When a migraine forced a writer friend to lie in a dark room for hours, she began noticing how her mind spun stories to fill the void. Later, those observations fueled her best work. The Stoic secret isn't in avoiding life's grit, it's in letting it polish you. As Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal, "The cucumber is bitter. Then throw it out. There are brambles in the path, then go around." You don't need to say, "Why do these things exist?" Some discomforts can be changed, others must be endured. Knowing the difference, that's the art of living. Seneca's piercing question still echoes 2,000 years later. How much of your life has been stolen by unworthy occupations? Not by thieves or tyrants, but by your own unconscious choices. Picture this: if you live to 80, you'll have roughly 4,000 weeks on Earth. Now tally the hours spent scrolling feeds, binge-watching shows you barely enjoy, or replaying arguments in your head. Seneca called this life lived in installments, frittered away on distractions that leave no mark on your soul. He wasn't shaming leisure, he was exposing how easily we confuse motion with meaning. A hedge fund manager I coached once bragged about his 70-hour work weeks until we did the math. 30% of that time was spent in meetings debating minutiae that changed nothing. "I thought I was productive," he admitted. "Turns out I was just busy." Here's the wake-up call: time isn't just passing, It's being actively spent whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. Modern tools magnify this reckoning. The average person will spend 11 years of their life on social media, yet struggle to recall a single transformative post. We chase notifications like rats pressing pleasure levers, mistaking dopamine hits for fulfillment. Seneca saw this pattern in ancient Rome. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they're most wasteful of the one thing in which it's right to be stingy. Conducting a time audit isn't about self-punishment, it's about reclamation. For 1 week, track your hours in 3 categories: survival, sleeping, eating, sustenance, work, chores, and soul learning, creating, connecting. Use a simple notebook or app like Toggle. The revelations are often jarring. One writer discovered she spent more time curating her to-read list than actually reading. A parent realized weekend errands swallowed 15 hours' time that could have been halved with planning. The goal isn't to eliminate all trivialities, but to spot the leaks in your days. Seneca offered a radical filter: hold every hour in your grasp, lay hold of today's task, and you won't have to depend so much on tomorrow's. Try this tonight, review today's activities. For each block of time, ask, if I repeated this for a year, would it leave me richer or regretful? That coffee with a friend who lifts your spirit, worth every minute. The 45 minutes lost in a Twitter feud, a withdrawal from your finite account of life. The Stoic twist: this isn't about rigid productivity. It's about aligning your hours with what makes your pulse quicken. An artist might waste an afternoon staring at clouds, but if it fuels her next painting, that's sacred time. A programmer might game for hours, but if it's his genuine reset, it's not wasted. The metric isn't output, it's intentionality. As Seneca wrote, life is long if you know how to use it, not how to cram it or how to hustle through it, but how to truly live it. So put down your phone, pick up your life. The clock's ticking, but for once, that's not a threat. It's an invitation. Imagine standing in a marketplace 2,000 years ago, surrounded by voices, some praising your wisdom, others mocking your sandals. Marcus Aurelius faced this daily as emperor, yet he wrote in his private journal, "It's silly to try to escape other people's faults. They are inescapable. Just try to escape your own." That's the Stoic stance on praise and blame, not indifference as apathy, but as conscious detachment. Your worth isn't a democracy where others cast votes. It's an inner citadel where you alone hold the keys. Consider how social media has turned this ancient struggle into a 24/7 gladiatorial arena. Every post, every photo, every opinion becomes a potential lightning rod for adoration or vitriol. The modern twist: we've outsourced our self-assessment to strangers. A teenager deletes a photo when likes trickle in slowly. A writer scraps a heartfelt essay because one commenter called it pretentious. But here's what Marcus understood: chasing praise is as futile as fleeing blame. Both tie your peace to forces outside your control. Try this mental exercise tonight. Recall a recent compliment that made you glow and a criticism that stung. Now place them side by side. Notice how both hinge on someone else's subjective lens. The coworker who called your presentation inspiring might praise your rival tomorrow. The aunt who scoffed at your career choice, her judgment says more about her values than your worth. The Stoic goal isn't to dismiss feedback, it's to sieve it through reason. Useful critique, file it under growth. Baseless sniping, return to sender. Here's where role play sharpens your resilience. Picture your boss publicly dismissing an idea you spent weeks refining. Your chest tightens, your face flushes. Now channel Marcus. Does their reaction change the idea's merit? Does their mood erase your effort? Respond not with defensiveness, but curiosity. I'd love to understand your concerns better. This isn't passive surrender, it's strategic poise. A chef I know practices this by reading one-star reviews aloud to his team, then asking, "Is there truth here or just personal taste?" The angry rant about too much cilantro becomes comedy. The note about under-seasoned sauce sparks improvement. The deeper truth, praise and blame, are two sides of the same fragile coin. Ancient Stoics watched Rome's elites climb statues of themselves, only to have those same statues toppled by the next regime. Today you're a trending topic, Marcus might say, tomorrow a footnote. That's not cynicism, it's liberation. When you stop feeding your self-worth into the fickle furnace of others' opinions, you uncover something unshakable. The quiet knowledge that you showed up, did your best, and grew along the way. The rest just weather against your walls, so next time applause or arrows come your way, borrow Marcus' litmus test. Will this change how I sleep tonight? Not because you're numb, but because you've anchored your worth where no storm can reach it. After all, as the emperor himself noted, the noise of the crowd is just that noise. Your integrity, that's your symphony. Every Olympic sprinter watches footage of Usain Bolt, not because they expect to match his world records, but because his form shows them what's possible. That's the Stoic sage, an ideal so flawless it's almost mythical, yet magnetic enough to pull us forward. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be." Be one, while confessing in private journals how often he fell short. The sage isn't a finish line, it's a compass. Think of it like this: no violinist expects to play like Paganini on day one, but his impossible caprices still guide their practice. The Stoics envisioned their sage as someone untouched by irrational emotions, unshaken by external chaos, a figure as rare as a diamond in a coal mine. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, reportedly said such perfection might appear only once every 500 years. Yet the power lies in the gap between our struggles and that ideal. Every time you pause before reacting angrily or choose principle over convenience, you're not failing to be a sage, you're approximating one. History gives us glimpses. Take Cato the Younger, who so embodied Stoic integrity that even his political enemies respected him. When Julius Caesar offered him clemency after a civil war, Cato chose suicide over compromising his values. Extreme, perhaps, but his example raises a mirror. What lines would we refuse to cross? Epictetus, born a slave, became the teacher whose words outlived emperors. His refusal to rage against his crippled leg, lameness is an impediment to the leg, not to the will, shows how adversity can refine rather than define us. Here's the crucial twist: the sage isn't a standard to shame us, but a spotlight revealing our next step. A basketball player doesn't curse their inability to dunk like Michael Jordan, they drill footwork and vertical jumps. Similarly, when you lose your temper tomorrow, don't berate yourself for not being Marcus Aurelius. Ask instead, what would Marcus have noticed in this moment that I missed? Progress, not perfection, is the Stoic pulse. So who's your North Star? Maybe it's Seneca, whose letters blend razor-sharp logic with startling warmth, proof that discipline needn't mean coldness. Or perhaps Portia Catanis, Cato's daughter, who famously swallowed hot coals to join her husband Brutus in death, a brutal choice that nonetheless speaks to unwavering loyalty. Your inspiration might even come from modern figures: a teacher who models patience, a parent who shoulders burdens without complaint. Try this reflection tonight. Name one Stoic trait you admire most. Maybe it's Epictetus' resilience or Musonius Rufus' insistence on gender equality in philosophy classes. Then recall a recent moment when you glimpsed that quality in yourself, however faintly. That flicker isn't inadequacy, it's evidence the ideal is working. As Seneca reminded Lucilius, associate with those who will make you better. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve. The process is mutual. The sage isn't a distant monument, it's the whisper in your ear when you choose courage over comfort, one ordinary battle at a time. Seneca once found himself shipwrecked off the coast of Corsica, his entire fortune lost to the sea, his possessions swallowed by the waves. Most would have met this disaster with despair. But when he finally staggered ashore, soaking and penniless, he reportedly quipped, "Is this all fortune can do? She's given me a chance to test my philosophy." That's the Stoic art of laughing at misfortune, not to dismiss real pain, but to disarm its power with levity. Imagine standing in a downpour without an umbrella. You can curse the skies, or you can tilt your head back, laugh at the absurdity, and dance in the rain. The storm hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. Take the modern equivalent of Seneca's shipwreck, spilling coffee on your laptop before a big presentation. Your first instinct might be to spiral, "Why does this always happen to me?" But here's the pivot. What if you treated it like a sitcom moment? Picture the scene in slow motion. The cup tipping, the liquid arcing through the air, your dramatic gasp. Now imagine a laugh track playing in the background. Suddenly, the disaster becomes a story you'll tell later, complete with exaggerated hand gestures. A graphic designer I know did exactly this when her tablet died mid-project. Instead of panicking, she snapped a photo of her horrified face and texted it to her team with the caption, "RIP my masterpiece." P.S. Anyone got a spare charger? The crisis became a shared joke and her colleagues rallied to help. Laughter doesn't trivialize struggle, it tames it. Neuroscientists have found that humor activates the brain's reward pathways, dialing down stress hormones. The Stoics knew this instinctively. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The obstacle is the way," he wasn't suggesting we grin through genuine grief. He was reminding us that perspective is the ultimate alchemy, the power to turn life's pratfalls into punchlines. Think of a toddler tripping over their own feet. They'll often pause, check for reactions, then either cry or giggle. We're not so different. The stumble itself is neutral. The story we attach to it determines whether we're victims or comedians in our own lives. Try this today. Keep a mishap log. Each time something goes wrong, a missed train, a broken shoelace, a botched order, jot it down like a stand-up comedian crafting material. The universe really said, "Let's test this one's patience today." Over time, you'll notice two things. First, most disasters shrink when exposed to the light of humor. Second, the ones that don't, the true hardships, stand out clearly, demanding your full attention rather than getting lost in the noise of minor irritations. Because here's the secret Seneca discovered on that Corsican beach. Fortune's greatest power isn't in what she takes, but in how she reveals who you are when everything's stripped away. You can't control the waves, but you can choose whether to drown or float. And sometimes floating starts with a laugh. Walk into any shopping mall, and you'll see the modern temple of desire, flashing screens whispering you need this, mannequins posing with the life you could have, aisles designed to make your grip tighten around your credit card. Now imagine Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, strolling through those same halls. He'd likely shake his head and mutter, "You're confusing wants with needs again." That's the heart of the Stoic discipline of desire, not the eradication of wanting, but the radical recalibration of what's worth wanting. While consumer culture screams more, Stoicism asks a quieter, more disruptive question: why this? Let's break it down. The Stoics sorted desires into two buckets: virtues like wisdom, courage, justice, and preferred indifference, things that might be nice but hold no real moral weight. Think wealth, fame, even health. Here's the twist: you're allowed to prefer comfort or success, but never to depend on them for your worth. Picture two diners at a restaurant. One obsesses over Yelp reviews, agonizes over the perfect order, and scowls when the steak arrives medium instead of rare. The other orders simply, eats gratefully, and chats with the waiter. Both might prefer a great meal, but only one has chained their happiness to it. Now apply this to your own life. Grab a notebook and make 2 columns. First, list your burning desires: that promotion, the latest tech gadget, a bigger house. Label these preferred indifference. Then, in the second column, note what virtues pursuing them might cultivate. The promotion, an opportunity to practice ambition without sacrificing integrity. The gadget, a test of discernment. Do you need it or just want the dopamine hit? Modern marketing thrives on blurring that line. The Stoics called this out centuries ago. We suffer more in imagination than in reality, Seneca wrote. The sleepless nights over a missed bonus or outdated phone aren't about the objects themselves, they're about the stories we attach to them. Consider the irony of ancient Stoics like Musonius Rufus, who taught that luxury weakens moral fiber while living in an empire dripping with gold. His students practiced poverty not because deprivation was virtuous, but because it revealed how little they truly required to thrive. Fast forward to today's minimalism trends, often just consumerism in neutral tones. The real Stoic move isn't buying a $200 plain white t-shirt. It's asking if you'd be equally content in a $20 version. Here's your challenge: pick one want that's been nagging you. Maybe it's a designer bag or a vanity metric on social media. Now interrogate it. What virtue does this serve? If the answer is none, try this mental exercise. Imagine you've already acquired it. Feel the brief high, then notice how quickly your eye moves to the next want. That's the hedonic treadmill, and Stoicism offers the emergency stop button. The discipline of desire isn't about living like an ascetic hermit. It's about spotting the moment when a preference mutates into a prison. As Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal, very little is needed to make a happy life. Not nothing, just very little. The rest, that's just confetti, nice while it lasts, but meaningless when the wind changes direction. Right now, as you watch this, where is your mind? Half replaying a conversation from yesterday, half worrying about a deadline next week. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned personal suffering into timeless wisdom, had a name for this mental tug of war: the 2 handles dilemma. Picture a clay jug with 2 handles, one labeled past, the other future. Most of us grip both simultaneously, leaving no hand free to hold the present. But here's the Stoic secret: every moment offers a choice. Which handle will you reach for? Mindfulness isn't some modern buzzword to the Stoics. It was their daily drill. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Confine yourself to the present," he wasn't preaching blissful ignorance, he was issuing a tactical order. Imagine a soldier scanning for threats in all directions at once. They'd miss the enemy right in front of them. Your mind works the same way. That's why the Stoics practiced anchoring, not to escape reality, but to engage with it fully. For you, that anchor might be the rhythm of your breath, the weight of your feet on the floor, or even the hum of your computer fan. These aren't just sensations, they're lifelines back to now. Consider the irony of our hyper-connected age. We've got apps to remind us to meditate, wearables that ping us to breathe, tools that ancient philosophers would have found absurd. You need a device to tell you you're alive. Epictetus might chuckle. Yet here's the challenge: try sitting for 10 minutes today. No phone, no podcast, no multitasking, just you and the clock. Not to clear your mind, but to notice what's already there. A CEO client of mine resisted this at first. "I don't have time to just sit." Then his assistant timed his uninterrupted focus average span. 90 seconds. The revelation wasn't that he was distracted. It was that he'd mistaken frenzy for productivity. Here's how to reframe the exercise. Don't think of it as doing nothing. Think of it as vigilance training. Every time your mind bolts toward yesterday's regret or tomorrow's meeting, gently guide it back, not with frustration, but with the patience of a shepherd corralling a stray lamb. Those 10 minutes become a microcosm of life, endless distractions, endless opportunities to return, and each return, that's a rep for your attention muscles. The Stoics weren't naive. They knew the past holds lessons and the future demands planning, but they also knew that this breath, this step, this conversation is the only place where life actually happens. As Seneca warned, we are always getting ready to live but never living. Your to-do list will never be empty. Your inbox will never stay at zero, but the clock's ticking, not toward some distant finish line, but through your one irreplaceable life. So put down the jug for a moment. Feel the weight of now in your hands. It's the only handle that won't slip through your fingers. History remembers two kinds of people: those who built monuments to themselves and those whose lives became monuments to something greater. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the known world, often stared at the stars and whispered to himself, "Think of the vastness of time and space of the infinite worlds, and see how your life is but a tiny dot." That cosmic perspective didn't diminish his significance. It clarified his purpose. Your legacy isn't measured in statues or bank statements, but in the invisible fingerprints you leave on hearts and minds long after you're gone. Consider two graves in an old cemetery. The first reads, "Here lies John Smith, Vice President of Acme Corp, 1985-2042. The second, beloved teacher who made algebra feel like adventure." Which epitaph would you rather claim? Stoicism flips society's script. Your LinkedIn headline might list promotions, but your epitaph reveals who you were when no one was watching. When Seneca advised, "Live so that your deathbed self won't mock the person you are now," he wasn't talking about career milestones. He meant the quiet moments, holding the door for a stranger, listening patiently to a child's endless story, choosing kindness when retaliation was justified. Here's the litmus test for legacy building, the stranger test. Imagine a barrister, a neighbor, or a subway musician describing you to someone else years from now. What adjectives would they reach for? Intense and ambitious, or the one who remembered everyone's name? A tech mogul might obsess over industry disruption, but the grandmother who taught generations of kids to knit leaves threads of connection that outlast any app. The irony, legacy isn't about scale, it's about sincerity. Marcus didn't conquer nations to be remembered. He wrote private notes about humility, and 2 millennia later, we're still quoting them. Try this exercise tonight. Draft 2 versions of your epitaph. First, the resume style, 1 degrees, job titles, possessions. Now burn it metaphorically. The second version, 3 lines max, capturing how you made people feel. She turned setbacks into lessons. His laughter made hard days lighter, taught me to see beauty in weeds. That's your true obituary, not what you accumulated, but what you awakened in others. The Stoics practiced Memento Mori, not to dwell on death, but to illuminate life's real currency. When a sculptor chips away marble, the statue isn't in the pieces that fall, it's in what remains. Your legacy works the same way. Strip away the job title, the car model, the square footage. What's left is what mattered all along. As Marcus scribbled in the darkness of a military camp, waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. Not for the applause, not for the history books, but because when the universe erases all traces of your existence, the warmth you kindled in others will be the last ember to fade. So we've walked through 28 Stoic practices, not commandments carved in stone, but tools for your mental workshop. Think of them like a carpenter's chisels. Some you'll reach for daily, others only when life throws you a particularly knotty piece of wood. Marcus Aurelius himself confessed in his private journals that he often fell short of his own ideals. That's the heart of Epictetus' teaching: progress, not perfection. You don't berate a sapling for not being an oak yet. You water it, give it light, and trust the growth will come in time. Here's your invitation as we close. Don't try to swallow the ocean. Pick one practice this week, just one. Maybe it's the morning reflection ritual or the bear and forbear challenge with petty irritations. Treat it like an experiment. Notice how it feels to respond instead of react, to focus on what's yours to shape rather than what's beyond your grasp. Small steps compound. Seneca, who knew a thing or two about fresh starts, wrote, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." Your first attempt doesn't need to be flawless, it just needs to be. And if you found even one idea here that resonates, maybe Amor Fati's reframing of obstacles, or the liberating power of the reserve clause, consider this your sign to dive deeper. The path to poise isn't a straight line. It's a spiral where you'll revisit these tools at new depths each time life tests you. So hit like if you're ready to turn theory into practice, and subscribe for more guides to thriving amid uncertainty. Because the real measure of Stoicism isn't in what you know, it's in how you live when the screen fades to black and the real work begins. As Seneca reminded us, it's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Let's not waste another moment. Your next chapter starts